this topic that I'm going to talk about is not in the textbook, so this is just brand new stuff, okay? But it has to do with Caribbean music and Western Hemisphere music, okay? And it's pretty fascinating. Now, to understand this, we have to refer to an event that is sensitive topic, transatlantic slave trade, which we all know about. But this event has a huge effect on the history of music, the development of music in the Western Hemisphere, North America, South America, the Caribbean. And so it's quite interesting. What we have in, what we talked about before in the 17 and 1800s, where we have music, we have the beginning of opera, we have the beginning of the symphony orchestra, other things that are happening in Italy or France. And we start to see these things spread out over all of Europe, and composers bring in new ideas, new folk music from their home country, like Chopin in Poland, or some of the Russian composers like Tchaikovsky. But still, we're still dealing with European composers. Okay, so it's like a mixing of different European nations. But here in the Western Hemisphere, we actually have mixing of continents. We have European and African musical elements blending together. And in a lot of places, we have elements of the Native Americans as well. And it's going to vary from nation to nation, but all of the nations are impacted by this one event, and they all have a certain amount of blending. It's think of it like a spectrum. Okay, you have a certain amount of African elements, a certain amount of European elements, and a certain amount of the native population. So, but then not only that, you have different types of European nations that are governing these areas. Okay, and then you have different African tribes. So there's a lot of differences that can happen depending on what nation. Is it Spain that is governing this nation? Is it England? Is it France? Is it Portugal? And then also what African tribes, were brought to that area. And then also Native American as well. The Caribbean, we have several major countries. We have Cuba. We have Puerto Rico. We have the Dominican Republic. Any others you can think of? Guam would be Pacific. Haiti and Jamaica. And there's one more main. I'll put it up here. Trinidad. Okay. Now there are a bunch of other islands, of course. You have the Bahamas, you have the Virgin Islands, all these different islands. But these are the main islands. But it's quite interesting because you have different styles of music coming out of each one of these countries. There's some sharing that happens between some of these countries, especially Dominican Republic and Haiti. Why? Because they share the same island. Okay? Whereas all of these others are separate islands. Does that make sense? But we have Cuba is colonized by Spain, Puerto Rico, and Dominican Republic. So these three all have a heavy Spanish influence. Haiti was controlled by the French. Jamaica and Trinidad, the English were the colonists there. So, you're going to have European musical elements brought there, including instruments, including song forms, including different ways of playing. Okay? So, for example, in Spain, that's the birthplace of the guitar. So you're going to have the guitar brought to these islands that are occupied by Spain. Sometimes there may be a different name for these instruments. There's a variation of the guitar called the trace, which is found in Cuba. But then you're also going to have African elements such as different rhythmic patterns, a lot of improvisation in West African music, a lot of what you call and response, and then multiple layers of rhythms happening simultaneously. So what you call polyrhythmic music. Does that make sense? And a lot of times you'll have different meters that are happening at the same time, sort of a clash, and that's part of the African rhythmic elements. Okay, so it's much more complex than the rhythm in European music. So European music throughout music history has done a lot with other elements of music like pitches, harmony, writing melodies, but the African music has a lot of advances in complex rhythms and layers. In Cuba we have a style of music called the son. It has piano, it has horns, it has various percussion instruments, right? The most common instruments used in this style of music is the bongos, which we all know what that is, right? You have maracas, you have, sometimes you have other handheld instruments like the clave, but you also have the trace instrument, like I said, which is a offshoot of the guitar, and then you have a bass instrument called the marimbula, okay? And it is very much like this instrument I have here. This is a umbira. Have you ever heard of this before? Okay. It's have you ever heard of the thumb piano? That's another name for this. So this is an African instrument. It has little tongs that have pitches on them. And this one is actually made out of spoons. But the marimbula has tongues just like this, but it's built into a big box, okay? Because it's actually the bass instrument of the song, okay? So imagine a big box with maybe just 10 of these, but they're bigger and they have a lower pitch. So that's what the bass instrument would be in the traditional Cuban song, okay? So, over time, the electric bass will replace an instrument like that, but that is the traditional instrument. Okay, Puerto Rico also has heavy Spanish influence, and there is a style called the bomba. But you can hear heavy percussion and heavy vocals, right? Now that is a common trait of pretty much all West African music. The drums are very important, and sometimes you'll have dancers that are accompanying the music, and you'll have a group of drummers, and you'll have what's called a lead drummer, and then you have another set of drummers that just play ostinato patterns, okay? But the lead drummer will actually watch the lead dancer and will follow the moves of the dancer. So you'll have one drum that's almost like a solo player, So I took djembe lessons for 2 years with a guy from Africa, and so I was able to, get some experience in being around that. There was some drum classes in Colombia, and I got to see that in action, and it's quite interesting. The Dominican Republic has a style of music called the merengue. Not meringue. Okay. Merengue. So, but it's a similar style. Haiti was colonized by the French, but there was a revolution in 1804. So Haiti was a free country from 1804 onwards. So what does that have to do with music? Well, Haiti probably has the strongest African element in all of the Caribbean because of that reason. Jamaica, anyone know what comes from Jamaica? What musical style?
Reggae?
Reggae, yes. So reggae is the Jamaican fusion of African and European elements.